Hi everybody, and welcome to Lesson 1, GOTV Basics. So as we mentioned in the intro, GOTV stands for Get Out the Vote, and it means you're turning out voters that support you and trying to boost up the number of supporters that actually show up and vote on election day. So with that said, let's talk about the voters. Let's talk about the TV of GOTV. So the key question that we're trying to answer with all of this is, how do you grow the number of supporters that cast a vote? So let's just try and put this in context. So when we talk about TV, the voters, who are we actually talking about here? So if you consider the population of, let's say you're running for mayor of your town. So when you talk about the population, this would be the population of your town. Then when you bring it down a level, then you have your people that are eligible to vote. So, 15, 16-year-olds, they can't vote. They might show up and help volunteer on your campaign or something, but they can't actually cast a vote. Other portions of the population are not eligible to vote for various reasons. Then you have your people that are actually registered to vote. So this is something that's a little bit sad, is that there's quite a few people in our country that are eligible to vote, but they just never register to vote. So that is terrible. So that's what we have depicted here, is that it's an even smaller segment of people that are registered to vote. And then you have the vote. These are the people that actually show up and vote. So that's what we mean when we say TV, get out the vote. So if we were just purely trying to get out the vote, as there are some charitable organizations out there, and their whole purpose is to expand this bubble. They're just trying to get more and more people that are registered to vote to actually show up and vote. And likewise, there are charitable organizations that just try and register more voters. So that bubble that says registered to vote, trying to expand that bubble, get a greater proportion of the population that's eligible to vote to actually register to vote. What we're going to be focusing on is one level lower. So you have your supporters. So the number of people that actually show up and vote on election day, obviously some of them are not going to vote for you. I know, it's sad. Like, why do they even show up and vote if they're not voting for you? Like, what's the deal, buddy? But it's the harsh reality. So what we want is that portion of the vote who are your supporters. We want them to make up a greater proportion of the vote. So that's the whole idea here. I know it's pretty basic, but just want to make sure that we were crystal clear on the overall context here before we move on. So the key question is, how do you grow the number of supporters that cast a vote? That's what's depicted here in this little bubble chart. So this is the overall strategy for GOTV that I've depicted here for you guys. I wanted to think about this as a journey that the voters are going on, and that your campaign is the guide for the journey. They're at the front of the trail, guiding them along. Hey guys, here we go. And then you have these critical milestones along this journey. So if we take our key question from our last slide, how do you grow the number of supporters that cast a vote? So this journey that you bring them on is meant to address this key question. So let's take a look at some of these critical milestones. So number 1, the voter is aware of you and your message. So some strategies there for voter awareness would be community events, word of mouth, media and advertising, press coverage. So that's how you're getting people to recognize your name, to be aware of your campaign. And some people will not go past milestone number 1. Some people might not even make it to milestone number 1. So this is the idea that you have like all of these people in the population, eligible voters, registered to vote. So you're like going after these people are registered to vote and then bringing them through these milestones. And then some of them will drop off each time because that's just the nature of, they would call it like, in the corporate world, they call it like customer journeys, or like digital, like social media marketing startups. They call it funnels. You reach this many people, and then only this many move on to the next step, and only this many. So that's how we're thinking about it, is like a funnel for these voters. So number one, voter is aware of you and your message. The next critical milestone would be that the voter supports you. That's an important milestone. So the way that you do this is persuasive ads, attack ads against your opponent, one-on-one meetings with individuals, maybe door-to-door, one-on-one meetings with community leaders, organization leaders, and of course endorsements, where people see that you are endorsed by their local newspaper or by organizations that they're a part of and that they respect. So the third stop would be that the campaign, your campaign, is tracking supporters. So it's great that all of those people might be out there that are going to support you. Maybe they saw an ad that you put up, or an organization that they support is supporting you. But there's going to be an even smaller number of those folks from the second milestone that get to the third milestone, where your campaign is tracking that support, where you've identified them as a support. So some strategies for tracking supporters was like a homemade database, which we've talked about a lot extensively. It could be something as easy as an Excel sheet, but whatever your campaign is using to track voters. Likely you'll be using something like Nation Builder, like an all-in-one software, which we've talked about a lot as well, where your campaign volunteers and you and everyone working on the campaign are able to track voters and who they're supporting, who they're opposing. So then the next critical milestone would be that a supporter knows the election date. Sounds pretty simple, but it's a pretty big milestone and can be pretty challenging at times. So some strategies to get the supporters to know the election date would be mailers, social media, phone banks, text banking, door-to-door. This is where you start getting into what people traditionally think of as GOTV, is this when you get to this step here. Making people cognizant of the election day and then actually getting them to cast their ballot. But as I've shown here, GOTV is a much longer journey that starts much before that. So once again, fourth critical milestone, number 4 here, is your supporters knowing the election date. And then the 5th critical milestone here is your supporters actually cast their ballot. So they show up to the polls, or if it's a state where you can do vote by mail, they sent in their ballot. Either way, they have cast their ballot for you, hopefully. And strategies for this is the big golden question and the challenging part of GOTV is to actually get these people to actually cast their ballot. So there's different strategies around that. New emerging ones about social media that are pretty cool, and then more traditional ones like phone banking, which has evolved into text banking, and then you have your physical like door-to-door and poll checks. I'll explain what poll checks are in the future. So that's the overall strategy. That's how to think of this, is this journey for voters, a journey that voters need to go on, and your campaign is pulling them along in that journey, or maybe holding their hand, or giving them like a piggyback ride. How many other stupid analogies can I come up with right now? So that's the overarching piece. So this kind of begs the question here, how do you hit these critical milestones? So we know what they are, we know where we need to get people to, the place that they need to end up, and we have some individual strategies on how to get there. But like, where does the rubber really meet the road here? We have these strategies that sound nice, but like, how do we actually do that? Like, what are the activities that we need to take, and what activities are the most useful and have the most power behind them? Like demonstrated power to actually turn out more people and actually GOTV, to get out the vote. Let's take a look at what those are. So you have mail. This is, just as it shows, mailing people flyers, postcards, etc., trying to explain the different critical milestones to them or track them, but to hit those 5 critical milestones. You have phone banking, people calling on the phone and doing just that. Door to door, you and your campaign volunteers going around talking to voters face to face at the door. social media, all sorts of different ways to engage in that medium. And then, of course, texting, where you're writing directly with voters. So these are like the primary activities that we'll be discussing in terms of hitting the critical GOTV milestones. In the next lesson, we'll be taking a look at each of their effectiveness in hitting these 5 critical milestones of GOTV that we talked about just now. So, for example, here with mail, how much power does it have? How much power has it demonstrated to hit the awareness, to make voters aware of you, your name, and the office that you're running for? How much power does it have to persuade people to support you? How much power does it have to track what these voters are saying? Like, are they supporting? Are they opposing? How much power does it have to let people know about election date and then to actually get them to the polls? How much power does it have in that? So we'll be taking a look at that for mail, for phone banking, door-to-door, social media, and texting. So for each one of those, we'll take a look at its power for each one of these 5 critical milestones. We'll give them all a rating, and we'll see how they stack up against each other. So that's in the next lesson, and we'll see you there in just a minute.